So a new game called Project Rabbit was just announced, and despite us knowing literally nothing about it, really barely any information about the game, it may already be one of the most interesting upcoming Souls-likes that I have ever seen.
Shh. Be careful. I chased the white rabbit, and when I woke up, I was in a completely twisted world.
The reason why I say this title may potentially be different is because it doesn't seem like they're just trying to copy from software. It's blending extraction mechanics, co-op survival tension, and a twisted world into something that feels genuinely different. Now specifically, Project Rabbit is an upcoming dark fantasy action RPG being developed by the Korean studio Nova Flare. The game was recently revealed with an announcement trailer and a Steam page, and is introducing players to what the developers describe as an extraction Souls-like. The game heavily reinterprets the story Alice in Wonderland, but instead of colorful fantasy and surreal whimsy, the world appears corrupted, violent, and trapped in an endless cycle of decay. The trailer features imagery seemingly inspired by the White Rabbit, by twisted architecture, and gothic environments. Now, what I think immediately separates Project Rabbit from other Souls-likes is that it's an extraction-based structure that developers have detailed. And rather than simply progressing linearly through levels, players enter dangerous areas, gather resources, survive combat encounters, and then attempt to escape alive after you've done all of that. So this immediately creates a very different kind of tension compared to traditional Souls games. In most Souls-likes, death means retrying, but extraction systems introduce the fear of losing progress, loot, or resources after surviving difficult encounters. Now, according to currently available information, the game takes place in a distorted world called the Abyss of Time, a realm sealed away by a figure known as the Blood Queen. The people trapped there are unable to age or truly die, leaving them stuck in endless cycles of suffering and repetition. The surviving inhabitants apparently rely on protective barriers of light that are beginning to weaken, forcing explorers to repeatedly venture back into the abyss to survive. One of the most unique aspects of Project Rabbit is its visual fusion of Eastern and Western aesthetics. The environments shown so far combine Gothic European castles with Korean-inspired architecture, traditional clothing influences, and folklore imagery. Now that combination, that helps the game stand out visually because many Souls-likes, they often lean entirely into medieval European fantasy. Project Rabbit instead feels culturally blended and visually unfamiliar in a good way. The combat appears to emphasize heavy melee combat, dodging, boss encounters, and deliberate movement similar to other Souls-likes, but with added pressure from the extraction system and cooperative multiplayer elements. The trailer also suggests players will explore hostile zones under time pressure while attempting to escape with gathered rewards. Now, unfortunately, as of now, Project Rabbit has only been confirmed for PC via Steam, and there's no official release date that's been announced yet. But Summer Games Fest is next month, so you never know. So I think this premise works for this game because with Souls likes they can easily become oversaturated. It is oversaturated, quite frankly. I don't have Souls fatigue. I'll never have Souls fatigue, quite frankly. I don't think that's possible. But there are people who complain about things like that because these games, they tend to have a lot of overlap when it comes to their ideas and their depictions. However, with this, I like games that not only utilize that dark fantasy theme, but they also give its own unique spin on it and they add a story on top of it that's either already been used or it's in their own original story. So for example, with Liza P, that took the story of Pinocchio and gave it its own dark turn. With this game, it's taking the story of Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole and it's giving it its own dark turn. Who would have thought to even do that? It's such a good idea. The same thing with Liza P. So just to see a degree of originality is able to return a sense of newness to the gamer so that that Souls fatigue can be further put off and put off and put off so people don't get tired of the oversaturation in this genre of gaming. And again, I think how the developers they outlined they're really harping on the fact that their game is based on extraction. You ever seen the movie Extraction on Netflix with Chris Hemsworth? It's literally like that. Like you go in, you get what you need to get, but you also have to get back out safely or everything you did was moot. It didn't matter. And I think that dynamic in a video game, in a Souls-like game in particular, which are traditionally known to be very difficult games to play, Souls games and Souls-like games, the difficulty all of a sudden is now bypassed and kind of takes a backseat to fear. Fear of not only having to go into this area, defeat all the mini enemies and mini bosses and then defeat the main boss, but to also get back out, where you risk encountering something even stronger or losing all the rewards or the strides you have made in that particular section of the game. So I think it's a very interesting dynamic to where you have fear trumping difficulty. And then with regards to the symbolism of using Alice in Wonderland as the foundation for the game, Wonderland equaled escapism corrupted. That's what it seems like to be in this game here. Whereas in the original Alice in Wonderland, it was all serene and full of bliss and happiness and excitability. Well, this is a Souls-like game, so that escapism, it's been corrupted, it's been contaminated. It's not what you would think it would be. And following the rabbit down the rabbit hole is more so like you're following the rabbit into death, towards death. And that curiosity that Alice or the protagonist feels in pursuit of that rabbit, that leads to suffering. And I think the fantasy in and of itself is becoming a nightmare, because that escapism, which was supposed to be a joy, is actually something that is the polar opposite, which is why I said it's contaminated. And you see that degree of innocence, just that curiosity, that wanting to have something better, that wanting to be in a different environment, all that can just twist and turn and be morphed into horror. You know, I've never really been a big fan of games that utilize time as a feature. I see this in cinema too, where they utilize time travel. I really get kind of annoyed with stuff like that. You know, like with Avengers Endgame, the going back in time, with Mortal Kombat, the different timelines. That stuff really tends to get annoying due to overusage and due to the non-originality, in my opinion. But when it comes to this game, I think these endless time loop themes, because this isn't necessarily time travel, but it's a time-based mechanic that seems to be based on looping, like an infinite sort of system. And it's kind of like eternal suffering. You go in, you fight the boss, you come out, but you have to keep doing that over and over and over again. So there are literally endless, innumerable risks and situations for you to lose everything that you have amassed up to that point. So you're weighing repetition, but also stagnation. There's a cycle of violence, and your humanity as a person, I'm assuming Alice is human, and she doesn't look like she would be like a puppet like P or anything else. So your humanity becomes trapped in decay because you're in this constant mental state of stress and preparing for danger or escaping the danger, then having to go back into it. So it's like you can't die, but you can't really live and enjoy your life and experiences either. It's a trap. Now, with any venture or any creation or any endeavor that you undertake in life, there are always going to be inherent risks that are associated with it. And when this game in particular, I think a risk could be that the extraction genre is very niche, which I don't think is a bad thing because that means it's original. Souls likes are already crowded. You have Lords of the Fallen coming out sometime this year. You have Lies of P2. I think that's in development now. And even if it's not, Lies of P is out. You have other Souls-like games. You have to balance that player versus environment tension, which I don't necessarily think is going to be something a lot of people will harp on, because I don't harp on it that much. Like if I'm playing Elden Ring or Lords of the Fallen or Lies of P, I'm out there exploring, looting, trying to acquire better weapons, progressing the story. I don't really care if there are constant scenes where you have to fight and engage with enemies. It's a Souls game. It's meant to be hard. So that doesn't really bother me. But another risk is that this could alienate casual players. People are just picking up the controller just to play, which I don't really see why you would do that. If you're a Souls fan, you should get this. But if you're someone who just wants to play casually, perhaps this may not be the game for you, because based on the extraction mechanic, how there's going to be a time loop sort of system. And even if it wasn't that, if this just isn't something you would have played, then don't play it. But another risk could potentially be it needs some sort of identity beyond comparisons. So when you play this game, you don't want to have to hear your reviewers and the people who bought your game to say, oh, this is like Lies of P. Oh, this is like Elden Ring. Oh, this is like Lords of the Fallen. No, this is like Alice in Wonderland, Project Rabbit, whatever the actual title is going to be of the game. This is what it's like. You want to have your own identity and your own differentiating factors that set you apart from the other Souls-likes and Souls games in that overall genre. I think people are interested in this game already, myself included, is because there's already a strong atmosphere that captures you immediately. The trailer had memorable imagery. The protagonist is visually appealing, can't lie. The premise of the game sounds different. Who would have thought to make a game based on Alice in Wonderland by giving it its own Dark Souls sort of spin? I could see Neo is doing that because they thought of using Pinocchio. But it's just amazing how these people come with these ideas. And I think mystery, it sells curiosity. That curiosity will lead to you hovering on the game on the website. And that could eventually lead to you adding it to your cart and purchasing and buying the game. And then you'll be playing it. And visually, I think the visuals imply a deeper lore. And, breakdown YouTubers are going to have a field day with it. I know I will for sure. But there could also be a discussion to be had about just the bigger industry in general. And that's that Souls-like is becoming its own genre language. It's becoming its own thing. It's not just Souls games. It's going to be Souls games and then Souls-likes. And Souls-likes is going to be its completely own different thing. Whereas a lot of people probably look at Souls-likes now as just being simply derived from software. But if these games keep originating and creating their own new content and having enough differentiation from the source material, well, not necessarily the source, but from the source inspirational material, then it will become its own thing entirely, I think, because everyone would assume, at least I know I did, is that these other games, they're chasing from software. But now that these developers are sort of venturing into hybrid genres where you combine dark fantasy, fiction, mythology, history, all types of different works, that combination, that leads to innovation. By virtue of you wanting to put new things together, that creates something new in and of itself. And it just adds a new taste because these are familiar mechanics and familiar types of games that we play, but it's a brand new structure, which gives it its own new identity. And if Nova Flare can actually execute their plan and their concept that wants to combine multiple different genres or topics, such as psychological horror, survival pressure, and mixed with difficult combat, Project Rabbit might end up being far more interesting and far more successful than the working title suggests. I'm Harlem. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.